This is NTV.
A very good evening to you. You're watching the Nation Leadership Forum, coming to you live from the Nation Center here in Nairobi. I'm your host, Smriti Vidyarthi. Now today, our topic focuses on design towards sustainability. And that is because the future of design is sustainable design. Now, design defines how material objects look and feel and how they are used. And if sustainability is considered at the very beginning, that's in the design phase, the products that we use and the spaces we live in can influence our way of living to be more sustainable. But our organizations these days considerate of their responsibilities towards the environment and sustainability while new offerings are being created. And while creating masterpieces, are designers, architects, and developers factoring sustainability as an integral part of timeless design? Well, joining me now to discuss this are my guests, Kohler, Senior Vice President, Human Resources, Stewardship and Sustainability member at Kohler, and that is recognized as a global leader in design and innovation. The Kitchen and Bath Group manufactures fixtures, faucets, cabinetry and accessories for residential and also commercial and industrial markets worldwide. Also with us tonight, engineer Lucy Wanjiku Mutinda. She is the founder and CEO of EcoCycle Limited, and EcoCycle specializes in on-site wastewater treatment and recycling for reuse technology. And finally, last but not least, architect Wilson Mugambi. He is the president of the Architectural Association of Kenya. That is the largest association of built environment professionals in Kenya and the East African community at large. Great to have you all with us. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, you at home can also join the conversation online. The hashtag is Design2Sustain. Please do share your thoughts and comments, and you can also ask a question. And selected questions will in fact win a football jersey and also a Kohler branded merchandise. So listen keenly and we would love to hear from you. All right, well, thanks once again for joining us. Lucy, I'll kick off with you. Why is it so important to design and create with sustainability in mind, particularly in this day and age?
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. So when we talk about sustainability, in the simplest way we can think about it is enduring for the long run. So you want something that is durable, that will last for a long time. And while you're looking at durability and the long run, then you have to think about the environment, you have to think about the society, the people, and you also have to think about the economics bit of it. So it's important to design with sustainability because you will consider caring for the environment, and you're also looking at the end user, who is the person or the society, being able to use it for the long run with minimal impacts to the environment. And say if you are young, old, you need to have something that you can use now when you're young and you can still use when you're old. Not that you're living here, but when you're old, you need to move because where you live, it's no longer possible to live there. So sustainability is being able to use something now and the future, and also making sure the future generations will live for them this earth in a good shape that they can live, because it's the one thing that we've borrowed from our future generations. That's how I can put it in a nutshell.
Right, thank you. Laura, are we seeing this when people are factoring in design? Are we seeing more design trends that actually do factor in sustainability? Could you paint a picture about where we are today? What does the landscape look like?
Well, I absolutely think that more and more companies, manufacturers are focusing on design for environment. And at Kohler, we're working towards all new products in kitchen and bath will be designed with a DFE methodology, a design for environment methodology, from the very beginning in our new product development process by January of 2023. So that's exciting when you think about the broad portfolio of products that we offer to the markets around the world. And you know, it's our responsibility as a manufacturer to really believe in better, be the best we can be, and we always challenge ourselves every time we innovate a product to really consider its impact on the planet and its long-term impact. Just like Lucy said, sustainability over the long term. utilization of natural resources, of energy, of water, things like that that help the consumer be a better consumer over time.
So Kohler may be doing it, but from where you sit, are you seeing more and more industries picking up this trend and being more conscious of the environment and sustainability?
Well, certainly, I mean, look at the EVs, the electric vehicles. That has reached a tipping point. The demand is outstripping the supply, right? So that's a product category that has taken off in many parts of the world, and more people are ordering EVs because it's cost efficient and it's energy efficient, and the function of the cars are really starting to meet the need of the consumer. So I expect that to happen in many industries.
Right, okay. So in your view, we are perhaps on the right track. Do you agree with that from where you sit, Wilson?
Yes, definitely. I believe we're on the right track because people have now looked at it as not only an environmental thing, but there's also an economic angle to it, and there's a social angle to it. So a lot of the people who are thinking sustainable are actually looking at the broad spectrum, because those are the three pillars of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental. So it has stopped being environmental.
Right, but
Yes.
what then are some of the challenges that we are experiencing, or industries are experiencing, when it comes to thinking about design and creation, but having sustainability on the same agenda as well?
The first thing which comes to mind is the cost factor.
Yeah.
Because the initial capital to actually have something that's sustainable is normally a bit stretched from the initial budget that most people have for their projects. So the cost factor is normally number one, and any client who's doing a project, they always look at the bold print at the bottom of their bill of quantities in terms of why is this costing so much. So if there's anything they try to cut on, is the budget. And if they think that something can be given another alternative, they'll definitely look at something else. The other bit is also the economic environment. What kind of incentives are industries being given? And that's why I believe policy, and especially the government, comes in, because it needs to encourage a sustainable mindset amongst the various players in the economic sector.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, and we'll talk more about that, because the cost factor is a big one that affects everyone. Lucy, what, in your view, are the basic principles of designing and sustainability? What are some of the key principles? And can you give some examples of designs that are sustainable?
Okay, I think I had already touched on it, but maybe now go in detail. So there is the environment, of course. There is the durability in the long term, and then there is the usability by the person, because you have different types of people, age groups, you have the disabled, you have all kinds of people. And then there's the economics of it, because again, if you're a company, if you're not profitable, you're not a going concern, so you're not sustainable. So when you think about environment, we can talk about, we've touched on water, we've touched on energy, green vehicles and everything. So when you think about, and even solid waste. So solid waste can be, it's in its form, it's waste, but you have to look at it as a resource that you can convert it to the next thing. So if I think about our African culture, actually, like in the village, I think we were already sustainable, because when you finish your bottle of oil or the containers, the jelly cans, you find in the village people using the same jelly cans to go and fetch water. So it moves from a packaging item to something that is used to become storage or carrying water along. So that is now what brings in the issue of circular economy, and you will find some cultures already had that, but now we need to take it to a professional level where at the point of designing, if I'm a manufacturer, if I'm designing packaging or something like a bathroom sink, because you have Kohler here, when the time comes as an end user, I do not want the bathroom sink. Is it possible to transform it to a flower pot? Right. Is it possible to break it down and get the constituents, if they can be molded into something else, maybe a hand wash sink or a pillar somewhere? When you think about water, and I have to mention it because that's my forte. So when we talk about sewage, everybody sees yuck factor, and you can just see already from the facial expressions. But sewage in its form, 95% of it is water. But because it's contaminated with E. coli and human waste, we think we just need to throw it somewhere. But you treat it using a sustainable technology, it becomes clear, odorless water, and you're able to use it to plant trees, which now is part of fighting climate change and climate adaptation. You create green spaces, which promotes natural air conditioning, so you save on energy to use technology that is needed to do air conditioning, because you've seen it in a concrete jungle and in a green space, it's clear which part is cooler. So when we talk about sustainability, you're thinking bioclimatic designs. Like if you're designing a house, he's an architect, I hope I don't misrepresent. Instead of thinking of having so many lights like we have here in studio, you can use natural lighting. So when the building is oriented in the direction where the sun will be exposed most of the day, if you need cooling, so you use the local climate to condition your cooling and heating of the house. So those are some of the examples, and of course green energy, we have wind energy, we have solar energy, that's all green concepts.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So interesting. And Laura, you touched on what Kohler is doing, but Kohler is about, partly anyway, luxury and luxurious products. How then do you strike a balance between experience, that's sort of an experience, and sustainability and cost as well? What is the organization doing to address those?
So that is a great challenge, and we have to tax our design and engineering organizations to continue to innovate, to deliver a great experience for that end user while being as sustainable as possible. So imagine a luxurious shower. Many people think that you need a lot of water to have a luxurious shower. Well, we have a technology that actually pushes water and air together that minimizes the water usage but gives you a luxurious experience in the shower. And able to then customize the approach in one shower to give you that experience that you're looking for, or even take it to a hotel development and help them calibrate their water usage and help them save liters and liters of water per day per room. So that's the kind of innovation that companies like Kohler have to continue to challenge ourselves with, to minimize usage of energy and water to deliver still the same experience for the end user.
And is it working?
It is working, but we're working product line by product line through our portfolio of products so that we continue to really evaluate the delivery of experience and sustainability with every product.
Okay, and Wilson, you have, of course, designed some incredible homes and buildings, but how then do you convince clients to go the sustainable way, yet it's not so cost-effective to them, like you alluded to earlier?
Well, the argument that I use is that the initial cost may seem large, but in the long run, the saving is something which can last a lifetime and outlive the clients. So to your question about how I convince the clients, most of them actually come with the know-how that there is and there are strategies that can help me have a better building operation cost. Because if I use what I'll call the old school incandescent lamps, definitely I'll be using more electricity. So someone will go for LED. And you find clients being very particular about their impact these days, because no one wants to be paying high utility bills, be it water, electricity, even internet. People are trying to think, how else can I try and save? So there's a whole change of mindset, and I've seen that over the last 5-6 years in my practice, whereby initially when it was very hard to tell someone the benefits of having LED, having solar lights, wastewater management and things like those, people actually come with parameters and conditions that, can I have my house or my building being very eco-friendly and having a lower impact in terms of a negative footprint? Yes.
Lucy, yeah, go ahead.
I think I would like to top up, and it's a very good question, because when somebody is used to the status quo and it's half the price of what you're bringing, it's a difficult hill to hack. But what I have seen is, as the technocrat or the technical mind, you also have to be knowledgeable on the economics of running a home. So if you're introducing a technology, if I use my example, I really have to be aware if a client is not doing what I'm proposing them to do. The other option, if it's exhausting, I must have the numbers. Like I tell him, if you have a septic tank, you have to exhaust 4 times in a year. It costs you this money. To water your garden, an acre of green land costs you this much of cubic fresh water. So using those numbers, you bring it out very clearly. If you do recycling, I'm saving you X cubic meters of water, that's Kenya shillings. On fresh water, I'm saving you 10 exhausters in a year, and I'm giving you green space all year round. Even now when it's dry like this, you find a home with recycling is still green, looking very lovely with green lawns. So you have to know, you just have not to be an engineer or an architect. Get to knowing the economics of running a home. And when you speak what the client is experiencing, then they really see the point. The capex is high, but in the long run, my return on investment is about 3 years, 5 years. If you have that clearly, then they'll take it. And the other thing, seeing is believing.
Yeah.
So when you're introducing a new technology on sustainability, people will ask you, how many have you done before in Kenya? How
Show
many
me,
other
prove it.
homes is it working?
Right.
So you take them to site, they see it, and they're convinced, they listen to the other end user. So it's a lot of education and taking people to prove that the concept works, and a lot of education as well.
So are you saying that you are seeing this change in mindset?
Yes, yes, and the average Kenyan right now is very well informed, and maybe we'll get to the point of digitization, but
Yes.
it has really played a role because everybody is aware what's happening globally. And the other thing that must force us to think sustainability, everybody is talking climate change.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest solutions to climate change is being sustainable and reducing overusing the things that are causing the carbon blanket and making the world heat up.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Wilson, I just want to touch back on the issue of cost. How much more are we talking about, say, in terms of percentage, for example, a very sustainable home versus a conventional home?
Well, I would say the figure, maybe just to give a ballpark figure, you're looking at spending maybe 40–50% more on what you would have initially invested. I think the recent uptake or the legislation that's saying that all homes should have solar water heating has actually helped some sort of reduction in that cost. It's still a bit high for the very common wananchi, for lack of a better term. But yes, that's kind of the outlook, the output that you need to think about. But from what I can see from, as what Lucy has mentioned, the uptake is good and Kenyans are very well informed. Actually, the global village is very well informed. So when you talk sustainability, it's no longer a foreign concept. It's actually something that people say, yes, we need to go that way.
Okay. Laura, there's a project that Kohler is part of, and that is Safe Water for All. If you could tell us a little bit about that, because of course Kohler products consume this critical commodity, and that is water. It is scarce in many parts of the world. So tell us more about how Kohler, I mean, you touched on it, but how they support the preservation of water.
So a number of years ago, we did a survey of our associates, 45,000 around the world, and we asked them what they cared about and what we were uniquely suited to help solve which of the world's biggest problems. They chose water. And our associates said Kohler actually can really help find solutions in the communities where we work and live. So we looked at the communities that are the most deficited water areas of the world where we make products. And we problem solve with those communities because we believe everyone should have access to safe water and sanitation. So we problem solve with our communities. Our engineers and our team members come together with that community and create access to safe water and create sanitation solutions. And those are called Kohler Water Impact Projects. So we have those in a number of locations around the world. And we really believe that when people have access to safe water and sanitation, it changes lives. And you can see better education, access to a healthier living, healthy lives, and ultimately a stronger economy in those communities. So we are working bit by bit around the world to really help bring solutions to safe water and sanitation.
All right, and just a reminder to our viewers that you are watching the Nation Leadership Forum, and this discussion is about designing for sustainability. And we invite you to join the conversation. Use the hashtag Design2Sustain, and that is the number 2, Design2Sustain. And selected questions, well, you will win a football jersey and also some Kohler merchandise. And we do, in fact, have a question from John Mwangi. He's located here in Kenya, and his question is directed to you, Wilson. Is it practical for countries that have not enforced legislations and regulations to have a sustainable future through well thought out designs?
I think it is absolutely very possible, and it's actually practical, because what is sustainability? It's all about using the current resources to fulfill the needs of this generation without compromising the resources for the next generation. So any country which will be thinking about its future is definitely going to be triggered to think about how can we use what we have here and not deplete what is there for other generations. So in terms of design, I think before legislation and policy comes into place, it needs to have a very active sort of implementation from the professionals and the stakeholders in every sector, from manufacturing, real estate, even banking. There are so many ways in which sustainability can be applied. And that's why the pillars I talked about, economic, environmental, and social. You look at it, there's also a social angle to it. If you look at the SDG goals, they talk about well-being, water and sanitation, which Laura's just touched on, sustainable cities, which actually AAK had been talking about for the last 2 weeks. And you realize there's a whole sort of vortex of benefits that you can have as a society. So it goes without saying that if a society is thinking about its future and wants to see generation after generation living well and being healthy, then definitely sustainability is the way to go, and design can actually be a very big part of that.
Lucy, what are your thoughts on that? In your view, do you think legislation and regulation would help move things fast and create a better impact?
Definitely, I agree it would, but allow me to add something. And
Sure.
because when we talk about sustainability, you need to tie in current affairs and what is supposed to happen. So let's say AAK has been talking about sustainable cities. We happen to have our overall country leadership forming teams right now. Let's say they're dreaming to have sustainable cities. Apart from making the legislation, if you listen to Laura, every time she speaks about Kohler and their sustainable products, she's mentioning our engineers, our designers, our architects give us this stuff. Now, if you want to have a sustainable city or county, it means you also have to have a sustainable team. A team that understands what's sustainability, what's design of infrastructure incorporating sustainability. So it's up to the leaders to think about having the right technocrats in their departments. If they really want to have cities with light rail, with green, sustainable surroundings, water supply, everything, it needs experts to do it. So part of sustainability, even before you make the legislation, it's good to have the legislation, but who is going to make it happen?
Right.
It's the technocrat that understands. And if you do not have the right team, if you do not have Smrit to read news, it's not sustainable for the company. If you do not have a competent news anchor to keep doing it, it's not sustainable. So the same thing, as they make policies to have sustainable cities, to have sustainability pick up in the country, then we must remember we must have a sustainable team in place to roll out and design these things. As you hear, she keeps mentioning who are the right people.
Do you believe we have that in Kenya, or are we lacking?
We have the competent people. It's just to make sure that when teams are being formed to work on a sustainable city, make sure you have the experts in the team so that they can bring in the knowledge to achieve sustainability. Because you may have the vision of fighting climate change or having sustainable cities, a sustainable Kenya, but then you do not have the team to execute it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Laura, any thoughts
Well,
on
I
that?
thought that was a great point, Lucy, because we are seeing new capabilities needing to be formed with people who have sustainability skill sets and ways of thinking. And sometimes teams that you've had in place for a while, whether it's an engineering team, a finance team, an energy usage team, an operations team, you need to infuse that team with some new talents, really that help you pivot, really pivot to this new world of thinking for the environment, thinking for sustainability. And it's not that you have to throw out the old team, but you just have to infuse your team with new talents and really allow that openness and flexibility of thinking, of design thinking, really to take over. And it really has to happen in every element of society in order for sustainable cities really to take hold.
Yeah, all right, interesting points there, and this conversation will continue in just a moment, but it is the top of the hour. We've got to take a quick break on NTV. This is the Nation Leadership Forum. Stay with us. This conversation on Design to Sustain continues in a moment.
$199, $200. Here it is. The treasure is down there. Well, start digging. Quicker. Dig quicker. Here, drink a Red Bull. That's better. Can you see it? How much is there? Hello? Have you found the treasure? Hello? Hello?
Red Bull gives gives you wings.
Your Excellency, sir, before you is a team of investors ready to be awarded. Anthony, Celebration Gardens, Kitengela.
Anthony, congratulations. You too can own land today.
Become a Shuja today by buying a value-added property that come with water, electricity. For every 910,000 that you deposit or place as installment towards your property, we give you 10k cashback or an equivalent Shuja shopping voucher. Call us on 0790 300 300.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
Welcome back to the Nation Leadership Forum, where we are discussing the importance of designing and creating, but bearing in mind sustainability. And my guests are still with me here in studio. You can join the conversation. Just use the hashtag Design2Sustain. That is #2. You can tweet us at NTV Kenya or even at Smriti Vidyarthi. And selected questions, well, you will win a football jersey and also some merchandise. So keep listening. Okay, let's pick up from where we left off, and we were talking about the importance of legislation, and that came from a question from John Mwangi, who had asked whether it's practical for countries that don't have enforced legislation or regulation to have a sustainable future. The consensus was yes, it is possible, but Lucy, you brought up some key points about the importance of having relevant technocrats in government to make it happen. Wilson, you wanted to contribute to that.
Yes, I just wanted to top up Lucy's point, because one of the things we struggle with as an association and as built environment professionals in this country is the lack of capacity at the county government levels.
Right.
You find that these are people who are going to be managing major resources, and if you just look at the building sector, you realize there's a big gap. You'll find that most counties won't have the right number, or actually the proper qualification of people in terms of architects, engineers, planners. There's a big capacity gap, and we keep writing to them and we keep enforcing that you need to up your capacity, because I as an architect cannot go out to say to a Singishu, and I've come up with this big project which has a lot of complexity to some people, but you need someone who's able to meet you eye to eye there and say, okay, I can see what you're trying to bring to this level. And we need, you know, the the Council of Governors, and even the national government to enforce that. Before we go into the particular legislation, there's need for us to actually have that kind of manpower at the local government or the county government level, whereby we're actually able to guarantee that what the citizens get at that level is actually sustainable. Because if it's not, then what are we doing for our country? It needs to spread, not just in the capital or the main cities.
And that's critical, particularly at this time when new county governments are being formed. So what then would your message be to the leadership?
My message to the leadership is please, please consider having the proper professionals in various capacities. So all the county governments are appointing their CECs and of course their chief officers very soon. Let's have people who are competent and very qualified at the same time. Let's have people with a portfolio and the know-how of how to go about various ideas or various projects within their dockets. Because you find there's a lot of hullabaloo about the budget. That's all you see the county governments fighting about. Are we getting enough allocation? But at the same time, is that allocation being used properly?
Right.
Do we have the relevant people who are able to channel those resources to ensure longevity of anything that's been brought up in terms of a new project?
Right.
So yes, my clarion call is let's have proper qualified people in various capacities in the county governments.
Okay, yeah, because we're not just talking about sustainability in cities, we're talking about it countrywide in the counties as well, and starting at the grassroots. But Laura, what's your take on this? How do you think this can be encouraged?
Well, I think it's manufacturers' opportunity and responsibility to help designers and developers with sustainable choices. So we have to develop the products and then educate and provide enough information to the developers and the architects out there so that they can provide a portfolio of choice to the consumer. So that's our job. And if we, as manufacturers who are putting the time, energy, and effort into making sustainable products, if we were continued to be recognized and rewarded
by governments,
by governments, right, and maybe tax incentives, things like that, that really recognize the difference between a sustainable product and one that's not, that will actually also ignite and encourage companies to do more. And I think it takes all of us. It takes the manufacturer, it takes the architect and the developer, it takes the government. And if we all work together, it's a virtuous cycle, really, to deliver healthier cities, healthier lives.
Right. During the break, Lucy, you made an important point about the issue of taxation on certain products. Can you tell us more about why that's so important?
Yeah, so if you think about it, one of the challenges of sustainability would be the lack of infrastructure because of the way the population, if you pick Nairobi, the population has been growing at a faster rate than the infrastructure. So if you look at sewerage, you find only 30% is covered by municipal sewer. So when we look at taxation, if the government would want to encourage individuals to take responsibility and sort the sewer on their own, then it would help if somebody is going green and sustainable, that these technologies are, like for example, VAT exempt, which was there before COVID actually. Green technologies were VAT exempt, but then in 2020 the VAT was introduced. So giving the citizens a tax break or a bit of tax burden reduction when they go green would help encourage more citizens take up the responsibility of having to take care of the environment, because the overall government infrastructure is not there. And then it would reduce the burden on the government of further environmental degradation if people are already taking responsibility on their own. So I actually think the tax incentives to encourage people to go green, and we are talking climate change, we are seeing it. Cows are dying, the Maasais do not have a place to feed their cows. So climate change is real and the impacts are here. So how can the government support people who are ready to help in places where the infrastructure is lacking by taking responsibility themselves? Tax rebates would be one of them, so that more people take it up. And if I may add something else, we are talking a lot about education.
I was just coming to that.
Oh yeah, I read your mind?
Yeah,
okay, so if, one thing I applaud CBC for is that I see the kids are being taught about environment.
Right.
So sustainability is a concept that maybe has come up in the last 5 to 10 years. Perhaps our previous curriculums did not have it. So even as the education leaders are looking into our education and revising the curriculum, it's important that this comes in from the CBC level to junior school to high school, all the way to university, so that it becomes knowledge that we have as we are kids. And talk about it, it becomes a culture. Because if you go to Europe or say like in Germany, even a small kid knows that they're supposed to separate, if they're eating a sweet or they have a box to unpack, they clearly know which is the bin for what. So that's the level we need to get into, apart from regulation and laws to make people force people to do it. We need to instill it into our children, so it's a culture. It's not a good to have, but it's something that is sustainable culture that we just have, and we grow with it, and then it becomes easier for the future governments to implement sustainability.
Right. Wilson, is there enough awareness, do you think? I mean, yes, conversations are happening about climate change, about sustainability, but maybe at a certain level. Overall, do you reckon there's enough awareness? And if not, aside from education, what else do you think needs to be done to create this awareness at all levels? I mean, creating awareness through the media like we are today is one way as well.
Well, I would say we live in a society whereby we have the advantage of being very well connected. I can easily chat someone in Scandinavia, someone in the Americas, in Asia, before you had to use registered mail or something like that. So what are we doing with that kind of connection? We are getting enough information going around. We have enough people interacting and exchanging ideas. And you realize the gap that we have here is something which we just need to ideally think local and act global. It's actually a theme going around. If you think local, act global, you're not only influencing your neighborhood or your locality, but you're also doing something that's going to impact the world at large. And climate action has actually made people realize that the damage that's been done, we're feeling the effect. Someone in the village can tell you, The rainy season is no longer what it used to be.
Right.
We had one of the craziest coldest spells in Kenya for quite a while, recording low temperatures. And I've had a chat with a few professionals from the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway. They've also said, well, winter was quite crazy. They're hitting lows of lows. And at the same time, the summer is also, as you saw, there was a heat wave going around. And what is that doing? It's making people realize that we need to be more proactive in how we do and we implement our various activities in life. So one of the things that I would say in terms of acting or rather thinking local, can the government think about local consultants and the capacity that they have within? Right. Before they go out to say, okay, we have an expert from here and here, you actually have people who understand the climate here, people who've been trained to actually design within this kind of tropical climate, and they actually have a global mindset. So by virtue of that whole connection of the whole world, if you engage, say, a very big team of local consultants to, say, do the affordable housing projects which are being rolled out very soon, which have already been launched. If you're looking at 200,000 houses in a year, I challenge the government, let us get local consultants and a team, which, yes, you can have some support from one or two foreign entities because of the funding element.
Right.
But if you actually think very local, materials, manpower, everything, you're definitely doing better for your country. And that's what I'll be challenging the country, and that's what I'll be saying. Think local, think local. Capacity is here and we can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So maybe just to pick something from what you asked, does the average Kenyan understand sustainability? So what I would say, maybe the middle class or people that have gone to university, people who are working in multinationals understand. But maybe the question is, the Maasai who the cow is dying, or there's somebody in Kitui who is going through hunger right now.
Yeah.
If you told them sustainability, do they understand that? And so why I'm bringing this up is because as governments, even in the local counties, we may need to package the sustainability information in a way that the local person will understand at their level and how it's related to the calamity that they're going through. If they're going through hunger, now we may need, when we were young, we used to have people called agricultural extension officers. Perhaps it's time to have village sustainability extension officers that prepare content based on the calamities that the local person is going through and teach it in a way that they'll understand when we say sustainability, when we say climate change, because to a person in the village, what is climate change?
Right.
Use what they're going through to make it. And then we have digital telecoms coverage. What can the government leverage on? Because people are connected with phones almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Would that be an avenue to use to teach people more about sustainability in a language that they understand, using examples of the calamities that they are facing to link them to understand?
So that people can resonate, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing that we've done is really activate our associates around the world in something called the iPrize event. We have a small business team called Innovation for Good. And every year we have a competition of anyone in the company from any department who can submit ideas around a theme. And this year it was recycle, renew, and restore. And they're coming up with product and service innovations. They go through competition, and we will select the winners and probably create a new product out of one of those ideas. But the whole purpose is really to ignite everyone in the problem solving around innovation for sustainability. And I think there's power in that, right? It goes back to what Lucy said about the why. What does it mean for me? Why is climate change going to affect my life? And what do I have to do to change the way I think about my life? And what do I have to do to change how I live? And if we can get everyone involved in creating new ideas to live differently and make different choices, I think that this will become a new way of being around the world that is honestly a must, right? We must get there. But we have to really help people understand why it's important for them and get everyone involved.
But how challenging is that? Because, as you say, it's important to ensure that people are able to create that link. This is happening to me because of this. But surely that's also a challenge, because a lot of people are not thinking necessarily about saving the planet because they're thinking about saving themselves. You know, they're thinking, I need to have food on my table tomorrow. So how difficult is this really becoming? Wilson, I'll put that to you.
I think you need to use a very practical sort of approach. Show people that the actions that we are taking now, especially the negative ones, they are affecting not only your source of livelihood, but also the bottom line of anything that you're doing. Because yes, people think about, I need to put food on my table, and I need to take my children to school, I need to go to work and everything. But when you look at it holistically, there's a very big argument for if we are more sustainable in how we do this. And that's where now the communication that Lucy and Laura are talking about.
Education, yeah.
I mean, social media connects us very quickly.
Right.
We're able to know what's happening, in a flash. So there's actually a very big argument to show people that our actions, say you're doing a particular kind of mining, this is the long-term effect. You have people who are, say, working in a particular kind of manufacturing setup, you get respiratory diseases. And if I touch about my building construction sector, I mean, you contribute almost half of CO2 emissions. So how are we able to curtail that?
Yeah.
We need to look at more responsive materials. How are we reusing? How are we reducing our impact? And I like the fact that you brought about restoration, because it also talks about our monuments and everything else that we need to look at. How are we conserving the monuments and the various symbols of national importance and cultural heritage within our neighborhoods and our countries. So there's a whole big opportunity for us to actually tap into.
Why does that matter? Why does that matter? Someone might think, well, what do we need? It's a monument, it doesn't affect me, it's there. What do we need to do with it?
My opinion on a personal level is that people need to appreciate their culture and heritage. We need to look at and appreciate where we've come from. And we need to have symbols that remind future generations that, there was a certain place we were and things were rosy or things were really bad. But it has actually come to a very fruitful and very colorful future for us. So
you're talking about the importance of creating sustainable monuments,
yes.
or conserving
yes.
conserving previous monuments
yes.
as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I mean, they're affected by the vagaries of the weather,
Yes,
nature,
yes.
and sometimes civil strife.
Right. Okay.
So if we're restoring them, for instance, how can we do it sustainably?
I see.
Because design is not about just the beginning of a new concept. It's
Yeah.
also what is existing.
Yeah.
I mean, if people who've turned around their buildings to have a lesser energy consumption and a lesser impact on waste. So the opportunities are there, and we actually just have to be very proactive about it and use the digital space.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. There is another question, and a reminder to our viewers: you can keep on sending in your questions, because you do have a chance to win a football jersey and also some merchandise. So please keep connected. The hashtag is Design2Sustain, and here is a selected question from Takila Mugo, also here in Nairobi. It is directed to you, Lucy. How does the digital economy affect developing countries in terms of innovations?
Okay, that's a good question, and I think we had already started touching on it. So the digital economy has really peaked, and we are talking e-commerce, and we are seeing it in Nairobi. Even in the villages, we see it's picking up. So one thing about digitization, as Wilson said, it creates a global village, and you find the transfer of information is really fast and learning from each other. So as we are talking about sustainability right now, and maybe somebody does not even know what sustainability, with digitization and a click of a button, just going into LinkedIn and joining a group of sustainability experts, even before it comes to your school or to your university, you already start to get the information. So one thing is that digitization makes the transfer of knowledge and information flow really fast. And then it also helps us collaborate in our designs, because when you come in as teams from different areas, you experience different challenges. So if we want to think of a sustainable design, everybody would be discussing their challenges in their different areas and bringing those minds together, which is made easy by digitization. It helps solve challenges with different views. And also for our children who are doing CBC and they're using digitization, I think they are going to be sharper than us, and they will learn faster on what sustainability is about. The other challenge of digitization, it comes with its technologies and all these gadgets. So even digitization itself has a problem of creating some waste. So we also have to think of sustainable management of the waste, e-waste and digital waste that is coming up because of digitization. So when designing digital platforms or digital gadgets, maybe we have to think of how they can be in the circular economy for longer. If it's no longer working, how can it be dismantled and the parts reused to make the next digital gadget or something electronic? So it's really an interesting space, the biggest being it makes the world a global village and makes the knowledge transfer really easy, learning from each other, learning best practices. And so the future generation has no excuse to say we don't know what's sustainability.
Right,
Yeah.
Interesting. Laura, so clearly Kohler is leading in terms of Design for Sustainability. What would your message be to other organizations in terms of exercising more responsibility, social corporate responsibility? Because yes, we are seeing a number of organizations that are slowly changing and are becoming more conscious, but we still surely have a long way to go. What are your views on that?
So we try to be better every day. We have a philosophy of believing in better planet, better lives, better communities, and we test ourselves against that. And we try to lead by example. We try to be an advocate where we can be, where we have great examples of success. We try to tell stories. We try to partner with other organizations to get the word out. And we actually experiment inside the company to see if we can push ourselves to recycle and reuse. So we've created something called the Waste Lab, and it is taking production waste and creating tile, beautiful tile that we are selling on Kohler.com and also on Saks. And it's an example of 100% recycled product from factory waste.
Right.
So our goal is to keep testing ourselves to see if we can do it and then tell the story and actually turn it into a commercial product. And that kind of thing really helps make us better. And I think when we start doing that, it helps manufacturers around us say, oh, Kohler's doing that, maybe I can do it too.
Right. It's so interesting that you talk about the importance of starting from within and testing within and then spreading that message. I can imagine there are a number of companies that perhaps through their corporate affairs put out the messaging, but not much is happening within their own organization and maybe not enough education as well. But Wilson, you touched on a point that interested me, and that was about it perhaps not being too late, sort of organizations or companies or buildings that are in place that perhaps when they were built were not sustainable. How easy or difficult is it for them to make those changes now going forward? And become sustainable rather than starting from scratch?
I would say the first thing, it's tied to their commitment. How committed are they? What do they want to achieve? If you look at the basics that Lucy touched on, you look at the use of natural lighting, ventilation, that definitely affects the kind of light fittings that you'll have and the kind of, say, AC that you'll have. You find that people, for instance, in the coast will be using a lot of AC. The other element is how you managing your waste. And are you recycling any of it? Because one of the key pillars of sustainability is the recycling bit. Yeah. So it's not just recycling for the sake of recycling, it's recycling with a certain purpose to ensure that what you're recycling goes to a certain use. So I find that there's a lot of opportunity for, I would say, the older structures to be renovated, and that's where the opportunity comes in. If I'm going to partner with Kohler, I know for sure I'll get a product which is able to ensure that this building, we can change all the faucets, all the showers to a certain point whereby they actually have much less water consumption. So it's about commitment. How committed are we as, say, an entity? Is NTV committed to make Nation Center a very green building? Show us.
Perhaps our boss is listening. We don't own the whole building as NTV, but yeah, no, it's a
valid
valid
point.
point.
To that, from now the designer's angle, like from the engineers, from the architects, from the innovator's side, one thing that encourages an existing user to convert their existing item or premises to sustainability is if you can convince them that part of what is existing can become part of your design. So if I may use my example, if I want a client to recycle, they want to hear if their existing septic tank can be incorporated into my design, so that I'm not telling them to start from scratch and redoing it over. If you think about sinks and faucets and items, you want to think of a way you design something that is compatible. So if somebody has a certain diameter of pipes and you're telling them to go sustainable, if they have to change all the pipes because your sustainable design is of a different diameter, then you face some resistance. So you want, as a designer, to make people to accept your design easily, try to design things that sort of will merge and can be linked to what is already existing, so that they don't have to throw away what is existing 100%, because again, it's not sustainable, because you're creating waste to be thrown away.
But this brings me back to the question about cost. I mean, and surely it's about commitment, like you said, and also about mindset, and also to some it's about priorities. take Nation Center, for example. Do you reckon that the building owners or the companies here are thinking about, okay, how can we make more sustainable choices? How can we change things? Because that's going to come at a cost. But the company owners may first be thinking, no, we need to meet our targets first, you know, and make profits.
So I think that's short-term thinking, and I think we have to help developers or, you know, large projects really understand their profit model over the long term, because you think about energy usage, waste management, water usage, and yes, it might cost a bit more to put certain renewable energy systems in place up front, but you need to manage that over 5 years and figure out the benefits of it over time. And I think many of us just make a decision for short term and we don't think about the consequences long term. So I think that's the opportunity, is how can we help our clients think long term, and consequences long term are opportunity.
Right. Wilson, in your view, what happens if we don't act now, if we don't take this action?
Well, we'll be doing a very big disservice to future generations. And we'll be giving them a very big burden in terms of actually surviving, just trying to survive, because survival is one of the biggest instincts for humanity. So if we are going to burden the future generations with survival, then we are not doing we're doing a disservice. So I think the bigger impact is, are we able to ensure that they're able to at least have a certain level of comfort and efficiency with the resources that we actually left for them, by how we manage them and how we use them. So the bigger impact at the long run is you'll be destroying the future for many people. And, you know, if I just take a simple example, the masks we're wearing during COVID. There are cities out there in the Western world which are filled with smog. People wear masks on a daily basis because of that pollution. Africa is not yet there. And we have an opportunity with our rapid urbanization to ensure we don't get to that point whereby we have that kind of pollution which forces the population to keep on wearing masks, because it means you're actually at the mercy of the environment. So I will just use that as an example. Simple pollution can tell you that if we are not careful with how we are managing and utilizing the resources, then definitely we'll be messing up the future for our children, our children's children.
Right.
And I would just say water's a precious resource, and we all can't live without clean water. So how do we take care of our cities, of our people, with the right infrastructure to deliver safe water? How do we ensure that our toileting system doesn't waste water, that's precious water that we could be drinking?
Correct.
So things like that, we've got to think for the long term and understand what sustains life, what sustains healthy lives, and make those choices.
Right, okay, we've got to take another quick break, but still plenty more to discuss. It's hour. Coming up are the news highlights. That's what you can expect during the 9 o'clock news. But for now, we are discussing the importance of designing to sustain. This is the Nation Leadership Forum. Send in your questions, use that hashtag design and the number 2 sustain, and we will sample some of your questions. 2 of our viewers have already won some prizes. That is John Mwangi and Takila Bugo. So please do keep your questions coming in. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Stubborn dark marks? Stop. Discover the power of vitamin C with the new Garnier Even and Matte Booster Serum, a highly concentrated serum that deeply penetrates, clinically proven to reduce dark marks by 43%. Get even glowing skin from day 6. New Garnier Even and Matte Vitamin C Booster Serum
by Garnier, naturally.
We asked Kenyan women to tell us what they look for in a lotion.
Leo tunaweka kwenye jaribio body lotion ya bei ghali na ya bei nafuu. Why pay more? Nunua Nice and Lovely body lotion. Ni bora zaidi kwa bei nafuu. Inai-transform dry skin kuwa deeply nourished na kui-smoothen.
It's just nicer and lovelier. Chagua Kenya's #1 body lotion.
Sio kupenda kwangu, ni vile economy iko.
Usijali. Wacha turekebishe.
Bei ya jana, si bei ya leo. Tunabambika na Jumia Black Friday. Nunua bidhaa yako leo. Uletewe haraka upesio. Na kuna kitu tu kwa kila mtu. Kuna ofa moto moto. Ocha kukipo tu.
Uchumi ni hard, lakini Jumia tunakusort.
My skin is my identity, my strength. It's unique and deserves care made specially for me. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care. With 5 oils and 5 vitamins. 48-hour nourishment. Helps reduce appearance of stretch marks in just 2 weeks. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care. For your shade of beautiful.
I fear for my climate. I fear for my environment. I fear for my people. And I fear for my life.
All around the country, the heat is on.
Hii watoto yangu suku ine tunelala hakuna chakula ushungu.
Nasema Mungu huyu haje wewe na mimi. Njaa mwalimu, njaa. Wengine wanazimia.
And the life and death choices facing governments. What is Kenya's plan? And can global leaders find a solution?
We are alive to the challenges of drought.
This week, NTV begins the journey to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt with special reports from the ground and expert views on the road ahead. That's on NTV, where climate action matters.
This is NTV.
Tonight,
I,
Penina Malonza,
Moses Kiaria Kuria, the oaths of office have been taken, cabinet is in place, and the work is cut out for them.
so help me God.
Plus, parcels of land, a mansion, high-end vehicles, assets owned by a lands ministry official frozen by the anti-graft court amid a 1.2 billion shilling unexplained wealth probe. Also tonight, the rains in Murang'a County have nearly halved due to climate change. Food production is being hit.
Tumekuwa tukifanya 40 tons a month na kwa sasa tunafanya 12 to 15 tons a month.
Our focus on tonight's episode on the road to COP27. And the vows have been made, the challenges have been posed, the reality has begun.
Uphold the Constitution and the rule of law to be front and center in the administration of our government.
Yes, this is on Front and Center.
Thanks very much for staying with us on NTV. This is the Nation Leadership Forum coming to you live from the Nation Centre. Just before we took that break, I pointed to a question. What if we don't act now when it comes to incorporating sustainability at the design and creation stage? Lucy, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's important we act now, and I like to use tangible examples so that it can paint the picture. Think about all the garbage lorries that you see around, or all the sewer, the exhausters that you see moving around. If you ask yourself, where do they take this waste?
Yeah.
It's somewhere in a dumping site, but if that dumping site is not sustainable, that waste is just collecting there and still going back to the environment. So if you are a leader of a city, a sustainable dumping site then would incorporate separation of the waste, turning it into something else, and even creating monuments, as you said, picking out what is useful and taking it back to the circular economy. So it's important we act now, because not only is it impacting the future generations that we're talking about, but if that waste is seeping back to the environment that we live in, say the sewer is flowing to the rivers and going back to Ndakaine Dam as an example, even you, the producer of the waste, it can come back to you in your current life.
Right.
So we really have to act now, even before the future.
Okay. All right, we've got a question on Twitter. That is from Patrick Amina. Patrick asks, can we integrate designs from unskilled population to make them resonate with current climatic conditions? Can we specify education scholarships targeting designs that are sustainable, especially from our colleges and universities? Laura, would you like to respond to that?
I love that question, and yes, absolutely. Great ideas can come from anywhere. And I would just say, I was just out in the Masai Mara and I visited a very large organic garden. That organic garden, there were containers, as Lucy said earlier, that they had reused all over the garden to hold different plants. They were harvesting year-round and feeding a large number of people. The soil was regenerated into compost, and it was very much of a virtuous cycle. And I would say the farmers on the outskirts of Masai Mara are very recycling conscious because they use everything. They don't want to waste anything. We can learn from that. We can bring those methodologies into our cities and really try to get to more of a zero waste behavior and start to treat things as precious. So igniting ideas everywhere, like Innovation for Good and the iPrize event at Kohler, and really igniting the young people and rewarding and recognizing scholarships, design competitions, all those kinds of things really ignite that youth in our universities around the world, and I think they can come from anywhere.
Okay.
If I can
sure.
just add to what Laura is saying.
Go ahead.
There's an element about the training aspect. And I think Kenya sort of lost the plot a bit when we converted all the polytechnics to universities. And that's where we're getting a lot of the skilled labor, the plumbers, the electricians, the masons. And what that created is that everyone aspired to be a degree holder. But in essence, we're losing the people who actually drive in the nation. And having realized that, now the TVETs are coming back. We're getting more and more people enrolling and looking at, I can actually make a good living being a plumber.
Right.
So to your question, we can actually use this opportunity. For instance, right now, Kenya is about to roll out a new building code, which actually takes into account various technologies and materials, which are meant to actually further the whole idea of designing to sustain. So that kind of code will actually be a very good reference point for people being trained in colleges and universities to actually incorporate in their designs in future and even for current professionals. So there's a very big opportunity for us. And I liked what Lucy mentioned about CBC. Our kids now are being taught the very basics of reduce, reuse, and recycle. So the mindset is actually being taken a step further. And we have a generation which will come up knowing that the environment is key. I think right now CBC actually has a subject called environmental. So that says a lot. We have realized what we are doing. And now we can just implement it via training and enforcement.
All right.
Yeah.
And Lucy, what, in your opinion, are some of the industries that actually have achieved that fine balance between design and sustainability, and what can we learn from them?
I'm not sure I have an exact example of a sustainable industry, but maybe the concepts. Yeah, and I would say it's the green energy areas. It's people designing gadgets that are able, like there's a gadget that is able to make water from air. You know, thinking of designs that are making use of the resources, the limited resources that are there, to really generate sustainable products. I may not have an exact company, but last year in Kenya, we had a young lady that is making paving blocks from plastic. I know it's not a big company, but that's a good example because we said sustainability can come from anywhere, from a small company, from a startup to big companies. So we have very many of those. And actually in the university, the competitions they do and the projects they do, a lot of them are thinking sustainability. And so maybe it's a chance for the government to really boost these ideas now and grow them into those fully sustainable companies that you're looking at.
I just want to move away for a moment from talking about the big organizations and the companies and the governments that need to take action. What is it that myself, my colleagues here with me in studio, can do in our everyday life to live a more sustainable life? How can we chart our path in that direction without, having to rely on big companies to take action?
I think
Wilson, I'll put
you
that
need to
to you.
have a very clear awareness of, one, the impact you're having. So if it's how you're using your electricity at home, how you're using your water, that needs to be really something that people take into consideration. So I would say if your colleagues here, then don't leave the lights on in the corridor. I mean, you find most corporate entities, like in offices, for instance, someone will leave the lights on and you'll see some offices. We look out the window now, you'll see several buildings, they're empty, but you see floors and floors full of light. Why? That's actually having an impact. Water, that goes without saying. We don't have enough water. Actually, we're actually fighting to have enough water. And that's where someone like Lucy comes in, trying to help us to recycle the water. Another thing is also the choices we make on a daily basis. I think I wanted to touch on her part of which industry seems to have really helped. If you look at something similar as banking, you can actually transact on your phone. What has that done? It has made banking paperless. It has made the need to commute from your home to the bank not necessary. So you're not using fuel, and you're definitely not going to take a commercial, a matatu or a bus to a particular place to say to do your banking. So that small things actually can actually help you reduce your impact. Carpooling, simple things. You don't have to go, right now if you go in Nairobi traffic, I assure you, each car has at least one or maximum two people. So you find 10 cars stuck in a jam, and ideally, if we were to take one PSV vehicle, it'll hold at least 14 people. So that says a lot about our lifestyle. We really need to think more in terms of how we're able to reduce the impact. And it goes back to how we're able to convince people, look at what it's doing to your pocket. Fuel prices have gone up. It's a no-brainer.
And I would just add to what Wilson said is when you're starting a new project, if you're remodeling your home, if you're buying a new object, slow down, think about it. Are you making a sustainable choice? What are the products out there that might be more sustainable over time? And sometimes we do things so quickly we don't think. And the other thing I would just say, on the airplane flying into Nairobi, they said do not bring plastic bags into Nairobi. And I would applaud all of you who live here that is a great achievement, that you have attained something. There's not as much plastic here as there is in other parts of the world. And that is a new behavior, a learned behavior that is changing your culture. And I think that's terrific.
All right, there is another question, and this one comes from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and it's directed to you. It is from Sijin Jani. Sijin asks, what is the role of Kohler as a company in contributing to net zero by 2030?
Well, we've actually set a 2035 net zero goal, and we're on the path to get there. We work scope 1s and 2 pretty hard, and we are on the path for scope 3. I would say also we are reducing water usage in our products and also in our operations, and we consistently measure that over time. We're actually also really looking at zero waste by 2035. So we are measuring our path. We're communicating our path now on an annual basis in an ESG report, and really trying to hold ourselves accountable.
Why 2035 and not 2030?
That's a good question. I really think that the technologies will continue to evolve. I think 2030 is coming up very fast, and there's going to be new technologies discovered. This is a long journey for a company as big as Kohler, and we wanted to really give ourselves that time to really get to the goal, and I think we'll need every bit of that time, but we're on the path.
Okay, great. All right, we are about to close. Time does run quick. So, Lucy, I'll start with you with your closing remarks on this topic of the importance of design towards sustainability.
To the average Kenyan, maybe when you think sustainability, try to live the way we lived in the village, or for those that never lived in the village, take a visit and see, like, reuse what you have, use less water. If you've used your water, we would use it to water the trees. You know, we use minimally without wastage. And so what I can say is it's not a big word that is not achievable. We can all do it. And what Smrit said, every person can do small steps in your home where you are, even before we get to asking the governments to do it. You can take individual responsibility, and then to the government to really have sustainability policies and policies that support citizens to be sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Wilson?
Mine will be to tell everyone watching and listening that we are passers-by on this earth. So it's upon us, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to leave this world a better place than we left it. We owe it to our great-grandchildren who we might not even see. And time will judge us very harshly if we squander what we have. So we are passers-by. Let's keep note of that.
Okay. And Laura?
It takes everybody, from the consumer making the choice on what to buy, to the designer helping that consumer create the best lifestyle they want to live, to the manufacturer operating in a sustainable way, to the government setting policy. And I think if all of us keep working together for that end goal of living healthy lives, we're going to get there.
Okay, and just a follow-up question on that. Does Kohler have any specific projects here in Kenya that Kenyans are benefiting from, or the environment is benefiting from?
Well, actually, we do have a sanitation partner in town called Sanergy, and they're in the informal settlements, and they're working on container-based sanitation, and we're field testing some units with them right now. And we also have a great, strong kitchen and bath team here that is really working with people like Wilson on bringing sustainable products to market. So I think we're doing both things, whether it is sustainable showers and toileting practices or container-based sanitation in the informal settlement. So really, really trying to benefit the communities which we work and live.
Okay, and Lucy, before we close, you are engineer, Lucy, and I'm just interested to know what needs to be done, or do we have enough women interested in this field of engineering and also in architecture here in Kenya? And if not, perhaps what your message would be to encourage both genders to get involved in making a difference?
Okay, so we're not there yet, but we've been on upward trajectory, and I think the number currently stands at 9% of engineers are women. So you see, we are really behind, but it's been improving. So what I would encourage is that those of us that are already there, we need to do a lot of mentorship. We need to go back to the schools. We need to set examples and show the ladies that it's doable. Not only just the women, even the men in the field. We really need to hold them their hands. And CBC is actually helping because maybe I'm not advocating for CBC. I know I've referenced it a lot, but it has actually helped children and children who are girls. You actually see them getting hands-on. So I think CBC might be a savior in getting more girls into STEM because it's pretty hands-on. Yeah. And
Wilson, what about in the field of architecture?
In terms of
gender balance.
The gender agenda.
Yes.
Well, on a lighter note, I would say the two presidents before me were ladies.
Right. Okay.
So, hurrah to the boy child for coming through. But yes, if I look at my council right now, the executive council of the AAK, half of them are ladies. Right now, if you look at the graduating classes of most schools of architecture, over 50% are ladies. So what does that tell you? It's no longer a man's domain. It's actually become everyone's domain. And ladies are actually churning out very good designs. You have amazing architects out there and engineers as well. So the tide has shifted. And right now, actually, we're in the process of ensuring the mentoring process. The boy child is not left behind. I actually do it deliberately because it's very easy to get very good architects who are ladies. So the boy child cannot be left behind. We actually have a very big task to make sure that they're not disenfranchised because we need each and every person to be part of this.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. We've got to end there, but your insights into this topic are very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with me here in studio on my immediate left, Laura Kohler. She is the Senior Vice President, Human Resources Stewardship and Sustainability Member at Kohler Limited. Beside her is architect Wilson Mugambi, the President of the Architectural Association of Kenya. And further away from me, engineer Lucy Wanjiku Mutinda, founder and also CEO of EcoCycle Limited. Pleasure to have you with us. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
You've been watching the Nation Leadership Forum, and we've been discussing the importance of design towards sustainability. Thanks so much for your contribution online. You can keep the conversation going, and thanks so much for watching. We leave it here. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. Stay tuned. James Smart is coming up next in a few minutes with the 9 o'clock news. Bye-bye.